first order of business is to dare to get quiet and look inside oneself and begin to realize that there's a disturbance inside. And once we realize there's a disturbance inside, we also see the way we sabotage ourselves and hurt ourselves. We see the way we numb out and check out and mood alter. We see the way we obsess. We see the way we are addicted. We begin to see the horror of our ways. And you can change the program, those neural pathways, you can change the program with self-awareness, self-reflection, and a good circle of men to help you begin to see your positive qualities.
Welcome back, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us again. We're back with Denny Marie Sebastiana, coach, facilitator, author. Thank you so much for joining us.
Always my pleasure, Joey.
40 plus years in men's work. Is that right?
About 40.
About 40. And Denny's been a personal friend and coach of mine since the beginning of this year, so almost a year now. And we decided to start recording our conversations because behind closed doors, generally they only benefit me, but we decided if we could have these same conversations and record them, then if there's just one other guy out there that sees this and it could possibly help and help motivate to take the next step in his own inner work, then it's worth all this effort. So that's what we're doing here today. And the topic of the day today is self-sabotage, one that I know all too well. We're going to talk about self-sabotage, what that might look like, and Denny's going to give some pointers on what we can do. So, Denny, first of all, when you hear the term self-sabotage, in your 4+ decades of doing this work, how does self-sabotage show up for men, particularly in 25 to 40, age 25 to 40? How have you seen it show up?
Well, I think self-sabotage is I do things unconsciously to hurt myself, to not finish the project, to not do what I say I'm going to do. And a negative consequence unfolds out of that. And one, ends up feeling bad about oneself, oftentimes shame or guilt. Is the emotion that happens out of that. So why do men, particularly young men, self-sabotage, hurt themselves, blow themselves up, or do something to not get what they're actually going towards?
I'm sorry, I want to interrupt you. Before we get into the why, I just want to recap on what. So you said it could be procrastinating or purposely not finishing something they started. It could be purposely ending a relationship or creating unnecessary conflict in a relationship.
To blow it up.
Blow up, topple the house of cards, so to speak.
Knowing that a work project, if I complete it, I may get a raise or a promotion, and I end up not doing it, falling asleep the last night and not being prepared and not delivering the goods the next day. And I kick myself in the head and say, why the fuck did I do that?
Yeah.
That's a good question that one asks in the face of how they hurt themselves unconsciously. Why the fuck did I do that? And it's a great question.
And now I'd like to get to that question.
What's the question?
The question is, why would
a man do that?
Especially when it doesn't feel like they're consciously doing it.
It's not conscious. It would be stupid. Unless a man, decides that he's going to blow his brains out. Self-sabotage, we don't go in with the intention, I'm going to fuck this project up so I don't get the raise.
Right.
We don't go in like that. It's unconscious.
Sorry, continue.
So why does that happen?
Why do we subconsciously self-sabotage?
Okay. What do you think the net result of self-sabotage is? How a man feels about himself? What do you think the net feeling is for you when you self-sabotage? What did you feel?
Well, in my case, you're pointing to me, but from our own conversations, we've talked about how I self-sabotage. But for anyone watching this or listening to this, I'll give you the quick rundown. one of the things I came to Denny seeking help with was, why do I constantly do things where I end up feeling like, oh, I got the short end of the stick again. I got fucked over again. I'm not making progress in my business, or I lost another great relationship, or I got passed over by this for this promotion, whatever it may be. And I think the answer to your question is it's reaffirming a belief we have about ourselves.
A belief I have about myself.
A belief I had about myself.
Which is what?
That I'm a victim. That nothing good ever happens to me. That
I'm a fuck up.
The world's against me and I'm a fuck up.
I'm a fuck up. Okay. So what if that's the root of self-sabotage? And the sabotage is an action that ends up confirming that negative self-belief. See? I told you that I couldn't fucking do this.
Yeah.
I told you I wasn't good enough. I told you that other guy, probably the good-looking schmoozer guy, probably should get that job over me because he's better than me. So I sabotage so that guy gets the job. It's a confirmation of a negative self-belief. That's what self-sabotage, the action of self-sabotage, is the unconscious intention to validate my negative belief about myself. And the last thing a man wants to give up is his belief system. And even if it's negative, it's comfortable, and he holds on.
Even if it's negative, it's comfortable.
It's comfortable.
So it's
familiar.
It's familiar.
And I get to verify that I'm a fuck up again.
Yeah. Is it possible that somebody becomes comfortable in suffering?
Victims have a party at it.
Yeah.
They love wallowing in the misery and sharing it with everybody, so everybody feels sorry for them. They get acknowledged, they get confirmed, they get attention, they get power, they can hold court, they can control other people. You don't want to hurt mama. Mama's in pain. Don't do anything to hurt mama. And it gets played out. That victim is the hardest psychological archetype to help heal because there's a payoff for all of that negativity. And self-sabotage, I think, leans into that. It confirms a negative self-belief, and I do it over and over and over again. So I can feel the truth of that negativity.
Does that, for lack of a better word, comfort in suffering, comfort in being the victim, if it's subconscious, you're saying it's usually something that was, most of these things that you and I talk about that seem like they're survival mechanisms that originated a long time ago and got buried into the subconscious, into the patterns. Most often than not, you lead me to the point of realizing this was something that used to serve me. Therefore, I developed it as a survival mechanism.
Yes.
And now my body doesn't know that I'm an adult. I'm not that scared little boy anymore. And I'm still trying to use those same tactics. Mm-hmm. Can you kind of put that into perspective, what that might look like in a man?
Well, when we learn something, we build a neural pathway of what that learning is. And when we practice it over and over again, we get to ingrain that learning and become good at it. In our early childhood, we are programmed by our parents, by our siblings, by our family, by our community, by our school, by our church, by the media, by our peer group of how we should be. And we want to belong because kids want to belong.
Sure.
So we say yes to the program, even if it's against our own good self-interest. But we don't know that until we practice that negative reinforcement over and over and over again. And one day wake up and say, wow, I end up feeling terrible over and over and over again. Why would I keep doing that? Then we take a deeper look. And that deeper look is hard because it's hard to look at old patterns. It's hard to look at how I was maybe the youngest kid in the family, and my older brother beat me up, and my sister made fun of me, and my parents, pushed me into the corner of the daycare room, and I ended up feeling sorry for myself. The only way that I got attention was to cry and whine and tell them I was hurting, or some such story. And we get attention from slipping into that part of us and that behavior in us that gets as much of our need met as we can, even if that need is met negatively. It's better than nothing.
All right, so all self-sabotage at the root is us trying to subconsciously fulfill this underlying negative belief we have about ourselves.
We undermine our best interests in the repetition of confirming that we're not enough.
How does a man begin to reframe or shift? Obviously, learning self-love and self-confidence is not an overnight thing. I know I've been working at it for years now. But I do think there are things that we can do to at least to start. We're not going to reprogram those old patterns that you mentioned. Those old neural pathways are not going to reform overnight. Mm-hmm. But I think men these days are waking up to things that can help in that fight to make it seem like not such a hopeless battle. What are some of the things you've seen in your 40 plus years of working in men's work that men can implement to start to shift it a little bit?
Those negative patterns have been in place for a lot of years, even in a younger man, a lot of years, and they've been tried upon many, many times. They're deeply etched in the gray matter, and they're not going away. It takes time and practice to build a new set of neural pathways. And of course, that's what affirmations are for. And it's very long for an affirmation really begins to take root. So we can't just change our beliefs overnight. There's too much practice in the negative belief to unseat it with a positive belief in a quick way. So what do we do? Well, we've been talking all along. The first order of business is to dare to get quiet and look inside oneself and begin to realize that there's a disturbance inside. And once we realize there's a disturbance inside, we also see the way we sabotage ourselves and hurt ourselves. We see the way we numb out and check out and mood alter. We see the way we obsess. We see the way we are addicted. We begin to see the horror of our ways. Because in the beginning, when a young man of 24 or 28 or 30 begins to look at himself, he sees a big pile of mess. And it's hard. So he may say to me, well, why do I want to look at myself? All I see is a pile of shit. I said, because that's not who you really are. That's who you've been programmed to be. And you can change the program, those neural pathways, you can change the program with self-awareness, self-reflection, and a good circle of men to help you begin to see your positive qualities. Because if you say, I'm good enough, it's not going to do anything compared to the 8-lane superhighway that says, you're not.
Yeah.
But when you begin to hear it from outside yourself, particularly an older man who may look like your father, who says, I see you, Joey. Mm-hmm. I see the beauty of who you are. I see the goodness in your heart, and I see that you're stuck in pain. Keep coming back. Keep talking. Keep telling your story. Keep doing your journaling. Keep paying attention. And that's what I would suggest from the beginning of stepping into men's work is, take a journal, look at yourself, take some deep breaths and feel what's going on inside you. jump into a men's group. It will be the best choice you've ever made.
Thank you. I needed to hear that reinforced, because even though I'm in a men's circle now and I have older men now that I can rely on, the self-confidence and the negative self-beliefs are definitely, I would say, the biggest challenge that I have, especially when you're starting a new business. When I'm starting a new business, starting a new podcast, there's plenty of room for self-judgment when you're in the beginning of something. And the things you touched on, I think, were important for me to hear again, and I hope it helps our viewers and our listeners out there. So that is our conversation, short but sweet, on self-sabotage, where it comes from, what you can do about it. I hope it was helpful for you guys. Denny, thank you so much, as always, for sharing your wisdom.
Thanks, guys.
We'll see you guys in the next one.